Wow, that's big, Jay.
Hour.
Big.
That is big.
Oh, it's a big deal.
That is
Big
big.
deal. Well, I'm gonna be off to Illinois in the morning, so everyone remember me and travels. But my plane shouldn't crash because they've grounded the 737 Max.
Were you on a 737?
I was on a 737. I was
Oh,
flying
United?
Southwest,
Oh, Southwest?
but I didn't know if it was gonna be a Max or not till I got there. So, but the good news is it won't be. So.
Good. So does that mean you're flying out of BWI?
No, I'm flying out of National.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So, usually the BWI is just Cindy and the boys, because they get a $40 flight from Illinois and comes into BWI, so. I think Cindy
It's
flew.
very convenient for me.
Well, yes, if I was Andrea Taylor, it'd
Yeah,
be wonderful.
exactly, exactly.
But as I live here,
Yeah.
it's a little, but again, it's literally no further than O'Hare was from our home. And so for me, that's the relative, and plus I was 10 years in Texas where we were an hour and a half from either DFW or Austin, whether you flew in. So
Oh, wow.
the notion of driving to BWI it doesn't cause me the angst it seems to cause.
You know, if you just went a little bit beyond that, you'd be at ballpark.
That'd be the ballpark, yes, yes. I know, you keep asking, but I haven't actually.
I bet Howie would take you this summer to see the Red Sox.
Oh,
Yeah, but then you'd have to see the Red Sox.
the Green Monster?
I'd love to do that. No, I meant in Baltimore.
Oh, in Baltimore. You're not gonna take me all the way to
The
Boston.
game that we can go see is the Phillies in the Red Sox. We can see Bryce Harper.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, that would be fun.
I gotta tell you, there hasn't been the angst about losing Harper that I thought there would be. No one seems to care.
Because they have so many outfielders.
Yeah, it must be.
I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, see, that's what everybody's attitude is.
He's
Like,
over
yeah,
80.
exactly, that's what also what everybody says.
Well,
So,
that would be another.
interesting.
What, he hit 250 last year?
I'm not a baseball fan, so this is purely a sociological exercise for me. But, like, oh,
Yeah.
interesting. I just find people are funny, you know. so.
He had a
Well-
good run, but
We aren't broadcasting it live tonight because Facebook is having problems, but I am gonna tape it and Jane will upload it onto the website,
So we still can't say whatever we want.
So you still can't say whatever you want, except you can say whatever you want at the edges now.
Right.
Because she can cut those out.
Alright.
As
Figured
opposed,
that one out.
as opposed to the
Not
live
well,
broadcast
I figured it out.
2 weeks ago when I realized that it had been running for 10 minutes and I didn't know what Bob and Ron Kelly were talking about and was concerned we'd have a hot mic moment here in DC, but the good news was that it didn't pick up you guys saying anything. Yeah, yes, I'm glad.
But even if it had, I'd have chopped it
She'd have
off.
chopped it up. Wouldn't have helped that night, but it would have helped later, so.
Sorta.
So for those of you who remember where we were, we finished Leviticus last time because I was just going to do one day on Leviticus. I could have done more, but emotionally I just felt that was about the right amount. And so I do love Leviticus, but it's kind of one of those things you got to take in little doses for me. Numbers is where we're going to go. Come next, we're just going to keep sort of walking through Torah here. I'm planning on getting through the first half. We'll see how far we get in that tonight. But Numbers, I think, suffers from, what's that?
Did you start that?
I think, yeah, a while
Okay.
ago, yeah.
I thought you said you had to.
I did, yeah. Numbers is a book that suffers from bad PR. I think they should have put more money in the title marketing because branding-wise, Numbers is just not bringing it in. It's just not getting the folks. The title actually comes from the Septuagint title of the book, and that, of course, was written because there are two censi. Now, how do you say it? What's the plural of census? Censuses? There's a census and then there's another census in the book, one in chapter 1 and one in chapter 26. And so that, makes you think of numbers. And so that is what gives you the title. I personally like the Hebrew title of the book better, which is In the Wilderness is the title of the Hebrew, that's a much better title. That just grabs you, I think, right
Sounds
there.
so cool.
Isn't it? I know. I'd like to know what happened in the wilderness, right? So it's a much better title. The book really does divide. It's one narrative at this point. So we're not dealing with the kind of material like we had in Exodus, where you have some narrative and you have some descriptions of buildings and architectural plans, and then a couple of narratives, and then some more architectural plans. And then Leviticus, of course, this law code, that didn't read like narrative at all. But we have three real narrative sections here that divide off. Most people divide Numbers into these three bits. The preparing for travel in the wilderness, which is chapters 1 through 10. Once you're traveling in the wilderness, 11 to 25. And then preparing for the invasion, 26 to 36. So those divide out nicely, but all part of the same narrative. And I should remind you that up until chapter 10 of the book of Numbers, The Israelites have been at Sinai since the book of Exodus. So since the giving of the Ten Commandments, they've been sitting there back in all the way through Leviticus and then into Numbers. They have been there. So they're just now getting ready to set out from there. So, questions before we get going? That's in the words of intro there. All right. The book is fascinating because it has a number of parallels. And I don't, memorize this. No. I just wanted to show you that the book has a number of parallels to the book of Exodus. There are very similar stories, although when Exodus tells a story, it inevitably is a favorable one, and when Numbers tells a story, it's usually not. So where you have the Miriam song of praise in Exodus 15, you have Miriam and Aaron's rebellion in Numbers 12. You have a 3-day journey to Sinai in Exodus, a 3-day journey away from Sinai in Numbers. They complain about water in Exodus 15. They complain, but we don't know exactly what they're complaining about at the beginning of 11. Later on, they're complaining about meat, but at this point, we don't know what it is. Manna in Exodus 16, manna and quail in Numbers 11, but that's not God giving it to them in Numbers, not nearly as positive. We'll look at that in a second. Here, it's like, God has provided us food. God literally says, I'm going to give you so much meat, it's coming out your nose. So not nearly as positive. Water comes from a rock in both places, only here, it's not a good story. We may get to that tonight. We have some advice from Moses' father-in-law on how to organize the people to get more efficient use of the judgments of Moses. We have a similar thing that happens in Numbers. Leaders are appointed in 18, leaders are appointed in 11, and Israel defeats Amalek in Exodus 17. They lose to Amalek in Numbers 14. So it's almost as though this narrative in Numbers is directly paralleling these narratives in Exodus, only in a less positive manner when it comes back to that story. So just wanted to show you that. We're okay? Everybody good? Life is good? Life is good. All right. The Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness are the first words in Hebrew, so in the wilderness. The Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting on the first day, the second month, in the year after they had come out of the land of Egypt, saying, take a census of the whole congregation of Israelites in their clans by ancestral houses according to the number of names, every male individually from 20 years old and up, everyone in Israel able to go to war. So the purpose of the first census is to figure out what kind of military that you've got. Well, how are we going to be able to have this fight? Who's going to be on the team? And so we're not going to run through the census, but I did want to show you what this looks like. We'll start with Naphtali here, the last of them. The descendants of Naphtali, their lineage and their clans by their ancestral houses. You notice that follows exactly the way God told them to do it at the beginning, that same phrasing. According to the number of names, from 20 years old and upward, everyone able to go to war. And you see that's repeated every time. Those enrolled in the tribe of Naphtali, 53,400. Okay? These are those who were enrolled, whom Moses and Aaron enrolled with the help of the leaders of Israel, 12 men, each representing his ancestral house. So the whole number of Israelites by their ancestral houses, from 20 years old and upward, everyone able to go to war in Israel, their whole number was 603,550. The Levites, however, were not numbered in the ancestral tribe among them because they're not going to go fight. So around 600,000-ish. This is the number that Cecil de DeMille takes so seriously and extrapolates that this is why there are 2 million plus individuals that are, you remember that voiceover, and the number that went out of Egypt that day, number 2, that's where this comes from, is the number here from the book of Numbers, 600,000. All right?
Put that into a little bit of context.
Yes.
Since the Vietnam era, Uncle Sam figures by loose rule of thumb, you will have 2 million draft age males
Yes.
for each age. That is 2 million 18-year-olds, 2 million 19-year-olds,
Okay.
2 million 20-year-olds, so forth. This is a big number.
This is an outrageously large number. This would have made, this number is, I believe at the time, at least 6 times larger than the army of Assyria or the armies of Egypt. Maybe 10 times larger.
They count 70-year-olds too?
They would, if you could hold a sword, they probably would count you in that list. Yeah, they probably would. So as Steve correctly points out, this number is huge. Now we talked a little bit about this number in Egypt and how many people went out, but I thought it'd be good to revisit that since some of us might have missed that night or didn't get a chance to go back. It's too many. It's too many. Traditional translations give 600,000 men of fighting age. In other words, 2 million people. All right, that's That's way too large a number. The land of Goshen in northern Egypt and the land of Canaan, neither could have supported this many at this time with the farming equipment as it was. And at the time, they said, we don't even have enough people to fill the land of Canaan. That was a problem that they had when they were dividing up the land. They were talking about going into it. It's like, we're not going to have enough people. You had plenty at this point. Too many people don't have to wait for God to go any place for deliverance. They go wherever 2 million people want to go. All right? Too many people decide to go. Okay, the folks around the edges are going to die, but most of you are going to get where you're going at that point. So that's a problem. Beginning of the book of Exodus, there are 2 Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah. For 2 million people, there are. Now, on the one hand, it does give credit to their story for we didn't have time to get there. They delivered too soon. On the other hand, we're talking about probably 2,500 births a day, and there's 2 midwives. Seems a little low. Biologically, 430 years, 70 don't make 10,000. Now, the Bible says that God made them fruitful, but I don't believe that the Bible means that God made them a litter of puppies at this point. That's a big number. And the crushing defeat they get at the Battle of Ai, 36 men. Out of an army of 600,000, it was a crushing defeat. They didn't know what to do with themselves. I think 36 would have died of old age before the battle was over, rather than that happen. So there are serious problems with how we understand this number 600,000. And most of the problems we have revolve around, well, there have been various explanations for this. The number is symbolic. I don't know what symbolism of 603,550 is, but maybe it's symbolic. Some have suggested it comes from the census of the time of David, and it's read backwards, which I suppose is possible, but that's a large number even in the time of David at that point. But the argument that I have, and the one that I think is true, is translating the word aleph is our problem here. The word aleph is the word thousand, okay? And it's the word that's translated traditionally thousand. It is also the word for the very first letter in the Hebrew alphabet. It's what developed into our word alphabet. It's aleph, you can hear it in there. It originally started as a head of cattle and was represented like this. This is a representation of the ancient letter aleph right there. In Proto-Hebraic script, it's rotated just a little bit this way. The Phoenicians went and spun it all the way around, and it eventually becomes our letter A, which you can see. So you see the connection to this all the way through. So, and it was just a cow head. Yeah, you can look at the letter A upside down. It's still just a cow head with, I guess, no horns or long ears, one or the other. I don't know what it doesn't have, but anyway. That word that originally was head of cattle began to be connected to the number of individuals an individual or town or family would have to contribute for a military draft. So depending on the size of a family or a clan, that when they were conscripted by the military, they would have to provide this many aleph, okay, to come into that. They didn't mean 1,000, they just meant it would be like using the word battalion or platoon, or that was used to represent a collection of individuals who are ready to go fight, and 1 aleph. Now, eventually that word aleph grows to mean the word 1,000. But that was not how it started. So the question is, should we be reading this text with it meaning the word 1,000 early, or should we perhaps better translate 603 units at 550 each, or 600, anytime you see the word 1,000, you put in unit in the translation. And then all of a sudden helps you re-understand that back down to 6,000 men of fighting age, 20,000 people, it's 2 orders of magnitude off at that point, and 20,000 people. I can handle God making them twice as fertile as the Egyptians. That number actually makes some sense to me. And the number 6,000, they're still way too small to fight the Egyptians. They're way too small to fight the Assyrians. And it really fits better in the biblical narrative. They actually have to wait for God to deliver them at that point. So I think our problem is not trying to understand this number wrong. I think the problem is we've translated it, and the translation has been understood traditionally poorly over the years, which gives us this outrageously large number. I do love what the Prince of Egypt did in the movie. They tried to have it both ways. Most of the time when you go out of Egypt in the animated movie, it looks like it's about 6,000, about 20,000 folks, until you get to the very end and he comes down from the 10 Commandments and the whole valley is full of people. There's like 2 million. So they want it both ways in that. But anyway, how you doing on that? This can give some folks heartburn. We can struggle with this. It's the second time for some of you, so how you doing? We're good? Some of you thanked me because you were bothered by this so much last time. I'm glad that I could help. This is, yeah, it's not surprising. All right. The Lord spoke. I want to show chapter 6 because it is such a famous, I love Hebrew poetry when it's done well, and this is one of the most famous blessings and beautiful bits of Hebrew poetry you've got. The Lord spoke to Moses saying, this is chapter 6, speak to Aaron and his sons. You shall say, thus you shall bless the Israelites. You shall say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Yevareka Adonai vayishmareka. The Lord bless you and keep you. Beautiful little, this is one of those times, Hebrew poetry is defined by structure, not rhyming. And so the first line in Hebrew has 3 words, the second line has 5 words, and the third line has 7 words, which gives it a total of 15 words, 3 uses of the divine name, and 12 other words, as in 12 tribes and the 3 uses of the divine name. It ends up being a beautiful structure in this little poem. This is also the earliest bit of scripture that has ever been found. In the year, when was this? 1990, maybe 1990, maybe a little before 90. They were building a highway around Jerusalem, and you can't build a highway in Israel without, people have lived there for thousands of years. You're running across a grave sooner or later. They came across a tomb, and they pulled in a salvage archaeology team. There are salvage archaeology teams ready to go when building projects are undergone, to just come in as quick as they can and do what they can to get them back on track. So this group came in, they found this woman's tomb, and around her necklace was a silver amulet. And when it was unrolled, it was a copy of this text, dated to about 600 BC. It's the earliest complete scripture ever found. I have a replica of that in my office, if you would like to come see it. A gift from my brother, as most of the replicas in my office are gifts from my brother. But he gave me a copy of that, which is it's just a beautiful text. Yes?
Is that definitely before the Babylonian expulsion?
Yes, it is before the exile.
Which means before, hypothetically, all this was...
Before traditionally you see, before it's finalized. How about that?
Yeah.
I am one of those who probably has an earlier composition date. Certainly an earlier oral history period, but I also think that many of these stories were written down earlier than a lot of people give them credit for. But yeah, so this text would have been, this text that was on her amulet was found from dating prior to when you hear people traditionally talk about the text being written down. Yeah. Banged into, it's carved into the silver on the amulet. So it's not like it wasn't papyrus. It was literally a piece of silver that was scratched on, and then they rolled it up around a necklace.
Is there like a name for the artifact, or?
It is the Ketef Hinnom inscription, I believe.
I'll ask you about that.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So, I wasn't prepared for that, but I did okay pulling that out of my mind. So whether it was right or not, you guys don't know. It sounded like I knew what I was talking about. I'm almost sure that's what it is. Boy, he knows what he's talking about. Yeah. I'm gonna start using Ray's line, you know the other librarians won't tell you this, but so, most people don't know. All right, anyway, let's jump down to chapter 11. Now, the people complained in the hearing of the Lord about their misfortunes, whatever those might be. The Lord heard it, which certainly upset them. They thought they were probably just doing this by themselves. His anger was kindled. Then the fire of the Lord burned against them and consumed some outlying parts of the camp. But the people cried out to Moses, and Moses prayed to the Lord, and the fire abated. So they called that place Taberah, which means burning, because the fire of the Lord burned against them. The rabble among them had a strong craving, and the Israelites also wept again. If only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we used to eat in Egypt for nothing. The cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, the garlic. Oh, what breath, but the food was so good. But now our strength is dried up. There's nothing at all but this manna to look at. Now, God has provided them bread from heaven, right? And little variety here, manna all the time. It's just too much. We've lost it. The manna was like coriander seed. Its color like the color of gum resin. The people went around, gathered it, ground it into mills, beat it into mortars, boiled it in pots, made cakes. Do it all the way. Boiled manna, fried manna, manna crusade, manna croquettes. What are you going to do? The taste of it was like taste of cakes baked with oil. When the dew fell on the camp at night, the manna would fall with it. But they want meat. They're tired of this manna. All you get, manna, manna, manna. So, I love Moses' response. Moses heard the people weeping throughout their families, all at the entrance of their tents. The Lord became very angry, and Moses was displeased. Now, I wonder who Moses is displeased with. Let's continue on. Moses said to the Lord, "Why have you treated your servant so badly?" Himself. He doesn't care about the people. This is about him. "Why have I not found favor in your sight that you lay the burden of all this people on me? Did I conceive all this people? Did I give birth to them that you should say to me, carry them in your bosom as a nurse carries a sucking child to the land that you promised an oath to their ancestors? Where am I to get meat to give all this people? For they come weeping to me saying, give us meat. I am not able to carry all this people alone. They are too heavy for me. If this is the way you're going to treat me, put me to death at once. If I have found favor in your sight, don't let me see my misery. I've had it." I think most of us in leadership positions have had these days. I think some of you might have stories about these days. God, if this is what, you know what? Just fire me, right? This is, just do me a favor. I'm done. If you love me, you won't do this to me, God. Why do I have to do this? So Moses has had it at this point. It's been a year of their complaining, and he's done. And he blames God as a result of this. It wasn't my idea to have a chosen people. I didn't want to bring them out. You created them. Do something about this. So the Lord said to Moses, "Gather for me 70 of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be elders of the people and officers over them. Bring them to the tent of meeting and have them take their place there with you. I will come down and talk with you there, and I will take some of the spirit that is on you and put it on them. And they shall bear the burden of the people along with you, so that you will not bear it all by yourself." Sounds a lot like the Jethro passage in Exodus, right? But it's not a positive thing here. It's a very negative thing. "And say to this people, consecrate yourselves tomorrow, and you shall eat meat, for you have wailed in the hearing of the Lord, saying, if only we had meat to eat, surely it was better for us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall not only 1 day, or 2 days, or 5 days, or 10 days, or 20 days, but for a whole month until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you, because you've rejected the Lord who is among you and have wailed before him, saying, why do we ever leave Egypt? But Moses said, the people I'm with number 600,000 on foot, or units, and you say, I will give them meat, and they'll eat meat for a whole month. Are there enough flocks and herds to slaughter for them? Are there enough fish in the sea to catch for them? And the Lord said to Moses, is the Lord's power limited? Now you shall see whether my word will come true for you or not. So we already see the glimmering of Moses' concerns here in the book of Numbers. Really? Is there enough meat? Really? You don't think I can do this? You don't think I can do this? Well, what thoughts do you have before I go forward on this? It's a great story. So, yeah, Steve.
Was this a parallel to the loaves and fishes?
Yeah, a little in reverse. There's no question that the loaves and fishes is without question is drawing on the Moses imagery and God providing food in the wilderness. I mean, there's no question, particularly in Matthew, where Jesus is the new Moses, providing food to hungry people in the wilderness. The feeding in the wilderness is absolutely feeding in the wilderness. But I don't know that this is the part that they're necessarily paralleling. Maybe.
Does the word spirit there translate the way we think of it? I would take some of the spirit that is on you.
That's a good question. It would be ruach in Hebrew, which is wind and breath and spirit are all the same word. The one thing that we would have to be careful of is remembering this is the technical term would be this is an Old Testament metaphysic, not a New Testament metaphysic. And what I mean by that is, after the Greeks conquered the world, they spread their concept of the body and the mind. And in the Greek understanding, the body is the prison trapping the good spirit. Material and flesh are limiting, if not evil, and the spirit, when it is finally released from the body, can go on and move forward. Okay, so that is very much a Greek understanding. The Hebrew understanding, in the Greek understanding, we have souls. In the Hebrew understanding, we are souls. You are living spirits. The soul and the spirit is a physical thing, not a disembodied thing. There's no such thing in Jewish mind as a disembodied soul. That doesn't make any sense. That's why, for the Jews, resurrection was so important, and the bringing up the body. So I'm wondering, when I say all of that, normally the word for living spirit is nephesh, the living, you became a living being. This is probably the word ruach, which I don't know how it's being used. I'm talking a lot here, hoping an idea will come to me, and I don't know exactly what it is.
Spreading
Yeah,
the pain,
spreading the pain out. Yeah,
spreading it to others.
Yeah.
The way you feel.
mm-hmm. Maybe. Interesting, in both Hebrew and in Greek, the words that we would translate spirit is also spirit, wind, and breath in both languages. So we miss a lot of the puns as a result of that. Like when Jesus tells Nicodemus, the wind blows where it will, but you don't know where it's coming from or where it's going. Well, he's telling him also that God's Spirit is moving, and you don't know where it's coming from and where it's going either. I mean, there's a pun in that sentence that we miss. Unfortunately, when English, we've got 3 different words, and a translator's got to take a shot. You can't let them stand in tension like you could in the original language. But no, I didn't have an idea the longer I talked about it, Ron. Sorry. Sometimes it happens.
I do. I have
You got an idea?
theological point here
Please,
because this is Peterson. He translates the word weeping into whining
Yeah,
all the way through. I kind of like that.
I do too.
The people are whining.
They're whining. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think
You're
that's
welcome.
right. Thank you. Yes, that's the message I'm assuming you're doing at Peterson.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, he does a very nice job. We talked a little bit about this in Men Retreat. I'm probably one of the few Old Testament professors that loves the message. I really do. I don't know that I always agree with his interpretation, but I absolutely always agree with his swing, with his shot at it. I really do. There's such, and for lack of a better word, there's such flavor that comes from a translation done by a single individual versus one that's done by a committee. Because Mike worked for Wycliffe Bible Translators, my podcast partner, and he always talks about, committee translations are always, what can we all agree on? We want to translate beige. Can we all agree on beige? Beige. Beige. All right, we'll go with beige. I mean, that's basically, you get a beige translation as opposed to someone who might say, I think red would work. It's like, we can't do red. We can't all agree on red. It's going to all be beige. It's like, okay, fine. That might be a place where he has a little more color. You're whining. Yeah. That's certainly more keeping. All right, so how are they going to get all this meat? What's God going to do? Well, God's got it covered. The wind went out from the Lord. Well, there's a pun for us with spirit, right? We might have missed. Good catch on that, Ron. The wind went out from the Lord and brought quails from the sea and let them fall beside the camp. About a day's journey on this side, a day's journey on the other side, all around the camp, 2 cubits deep on the ground. 3 feet worth of quail on both sides of the camp, all right? So the people worked all that day and night and all the next day gathering the quails. The least anyone gathered was 10 homers. I don't remember how much a homer is, but it's pretty good. It's 4 what? 4 bases. 4 bases is a homer. Yeah, that math checks, doesn't it? Okay. Oh, wow.
Am I right?
This is one of those times we can play on the lexical ambiguity and have some fun with it. Anyway.
The answer is 60 bushel.
60 bushel is a homer? Okay, so
No,
that's
10 homers.
10 is 60 bushels.
60 bushels, so 6 bushels.
6 bushels to a homer. So now you know how many 4 bases are.
Yeah.
There's 6 bushels. They spread it out before themselves all over the camp. But while the meat was still between their teeth, before it was consumed, the anger of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord struck the people with a very great plague. I'm assuming they weren't cooking these well enough, and that was part of the problem. So the place was called Kibroth Hatava. I'll do it again. Kibroth Hata'ava. There's 2 syllables there. Because there they buried the people who had the craving. From Kibroth Hata'ava, the people journeyed to Hazarot. So, there you go.
Wasn't everybody hungry?
Yes, but not everybody was whining about it. So, the whiners, while they were still eating, dropped dead. So, watch the complaining. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Because they'll just bury you where you fall with a mouthful of food. So, all right, how we?
And then they died.
Then they die. So, you okay there, Bob?
Pretty good.
Yeah. Well, there's some in the Bible for everybody,
But this went on for a month. It was supposed to go on for a month.
It did, yeah, but why wait all month when you can? Well, they hadn't even finished their meat was still in their teeth before they finished. Then they.
No flossing then, I guess.
No, that's this is why it's important to floss. I think that's the lesson the Bible's trying to teach. Someone that I saw, they posted online, they were a phlebotomist, and their dentist came. The person who, I don't know if it was their dentist, but a dentist came, and they were taking blood, and they accidentally squirted, and the phlebotomist said, well, the reason you're bleeding is because you don't floss. So, anyway. Now, I have to tell this story. Numbers 12, I'm not going to lie. It's one of my very favorite stories in the Bible. And the reason of it is, if there was ever the case where you can see that God has a sense of humor, and that it's just a little bit twisted. It's here in Numbers 12. This is to me, one of the funniest passages of Scripture. And God is just, he's great in this one. You're gonna love this story while they were at Hazarot. Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman whom he had married, for he had indeed married a Cushite woman. Well, okay, time out. We have no record of him marrying a Cushite woman, so this has obviously happened outside of our narrative here. There are some people who try to connect this Cushite woman with Zipporah, and there are a couple of places where Midian, where Zipporah is from, is in parallel with Cush. But most people, and I think the most reliable option, locates Cush in Ethiopia, modern Ethiopia, so sub-Saharan Africa. You've got Put to the west, or Libya, and then you have Semites to the east, and you have Cushites to the south. So they are sub-Saharan, typically understood as black Africans. The Egyptians were all about enslaving the people around them. They would enslave Semitic peoples, they would enslave the Putites, they would enslave the Cushites. And the Exodus does say that the Israelites went out and the aliens who were among them. So it does seem that there were non-Israelites who also took advantage of Egypt's weakened state and went out of Egypt along with the Exodus. We don't know anything about this woman. We don't even have her name. And so I always joked with the students and I said, you see, the less the Bible says about something, the more money there is to make. So what I'm thinking is, we need to start a story about this. Like maybe this Cushite woman was a slave in the Pharaoh's household, but when Moses was one of Pharaoh's household, they couldn't do it, so it was like an unrequited thing because they couldn't get together. But then Moses goes away, and when he comes back, she's still there, and now they can get together, and then they go out of Egypt together, and they finally get married. I don't know, I just made all that up. I have no idea who this Cushite woman is. I don't know where she comes from, but they're together, and Miriam and Aaron are upset about it. Well, that's what the Bible tells us they're upset about. Look what happens, look what else they're upset about. They said to other people, has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also? And the Lord heard it. Again, God's been listening. Got to be careful. You never know when God's listening. So they say they're upset because Moses is a prophet, and they're prophets too. They've got ideas about how they should go. They've got ideas about what they should do. Is God only talking to Moses? God talks to us. Now they're upset about the Cushite wife. But what they're telling people is, our leadership gifts are not being appreciated here. God gives us ideas we should be listened to. God heard it. Moses didn't say anything. Why? The man Moses was very humble, more so than anyone else on the face of the earth. Let's just take a moment to say that if we all believe that Moses wrote the entire Pentateuch, that's a terrible sentence to put in there, because the old joke that I got an award for humility, but they took it away because I wore it. You don't get to do that. Anyway. Suddenly, the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, come out, you three, to the tent of meeting. So the three of them came out. Do you ever sound like a parent every now and then? All right, everybody, out to the tent of meeting. We're going to have a conversation. The Lord came down in a pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tent and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forward, and he said, hear my words. When there are prophets among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to them in visions. I speak to them in dreams. Not so with my servant Moses. He's entrusted with all of my house. With him I speak face to face, clearly, not in riddles, and he beholds the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? And the anger of the Lord was kindled against them, and he departed. God's response to them is, this is Moses. The Moses. What is wrong with you? He's totally different than you, all right? Moses gets to come up on the mountain. Moses gets to see me pass by. Moses gets my word directly. With him I speak face to face, clearly and not in riddles. He's not trying to interpret some vague dreams. Moses gets exactly what I'm saying. Why were you dumb enough to talk against Moses? What is wrong with you? And then comes the punishment. This is wonderful. When the cloud had departed from over the tent, Miriam had become leprous as white as snow. And Aaron turned toward Miriam and saw that she was leprous. Oh, you missed the joke. Okay, here's the joke. Don't you hate it when you miss the joke? It's a great joke here, all right? What was the problem that Aaron and Miriam had with Moses? Married the Cushite woman.
Oh.
Married the black African woman.
Yeah.
So God's punishment is to make Miriam white. So white, she's leprous and cannot be part of the camp anymore.
Oh.
So, we're going to be Miss White Pride all of a sudden? I'm going to lighten you right up. All the way to leprosy, and now she can't be in the tent. This is hysterical. Talk about the punishment fitting the crime. This is amazing. Complain about this interracial marriage, so God ends up lightening her up to the point that she's no longer, that's great, white as snow. Anyway, told you, God has a sense of humor, and it's a little bit twisted. Then Aaron said to Moses, my Lord, do not, by the way, Miriam is punished.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
I noticed that.
Did you notice that? Did you notice who's not punished in this
Yeah,
story?
I noticed that too, yeah.
Interesting, isn't it? I have two explanations for this. There's the official explanation that people often give, which is, well, if he's a high priest, then if he's leprous, there's, the whole people of Israel suffer. He can't offer sacrifices. These decisions can't be. So I mean, you can't give the high priest leprosy because that just ruins everything. Or, I think a better explanation is we know exactly who the brains of this outfit was, and once again, Aaron has no backbone at all. You might recall the golden calf incident just a few chapters before this, where, hey, Aaron, make us a golden calf. Okay. Hey, Aaron, let's challenge Moses for leadership. Okay. I mean, this just seems to be, he knows he made a mistake. This sin we've so foolishly committed. Do not let her be like one stillborn whose flesh is half consumed when it comes out of its mother's womb. Moses cried to the Lord, "O God, please heal her." But the Lord said to Moses, "If her father had but spit in her face, would she not bear her shame for 7 days?" Am I supposed to answer that? Is that a rhetorical question? No, what he's saying is, if she had disrespected her father, she would have been put out of the camp for a week. So we're going to treat this punishment as though she has disrespected her father. By showing the disrespect to you, we're going to throw her out like she's disrespected her father. So Miriam was shut out of the camp for 7 days, and the people did not set out on march until Miriam had been brought back again. Well, that was nice of them, isn't it? They put her out, and then, let's go, right, while she's gone, and she dies in the desert. No, that's not what happened. They waited on her, and they set out and camped in the wilderness of Paran. So this is a really good time that I always point out that the Bible has absolutely nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with interracial, interethnic marriage in the biblical text. The Bible has a huge problem with interreligious marriage. And the problem is, in the ancient Near East, ethnicity and religion were often tied together. If you're a Moabite woman, it means you have Moabite gods that you worship, and you bring that into it. However, when a Moabite woman is a worshiper of Yahweh, in the case of Ruth, it's fine. When Zipporah, the Midianite woman, and Jethro, the Midianite priest, come into the camp, when they are worshipers of Yahweh, they're welcomed into the camp. They are not, after they hear the story, they praise Yahweh, they get to stay. So it's not interracial, it's interreligious marriage, and those things are tied together, and sometimes we can blur those, I think, because of our culture having those as separate, where it's not an issue that's so often tied to race. So that's a great story. I just love that story. I do. Just amazing. Questions, comments, thoughts? Yes?
Maybe I missed this, but what's the difference in the dating of Exodus and Numbers?
Oh, like when they were composed?
Yeah.
No clue.
No clue.
Not a clue. No. I mean, I can tell you the oral traditions. The oral traditions are codified and written down and edited together and in their final form after the exile. How long do they exist before then?
Do you think they were about the same time?
I think so. I mean, I do. I think that these traditions are so closely tied. I think they're telling, stories that, I think Leviticus is probably after them, but I do think that those two probably come together. The narratives, I think, come together earlier, personally. So, yeah. Yes, sir?
Is there a reason why the Lord's reprimand to the two is set in verse as opposed to prose?
It has that form in the text, visions, dreams. This is a stair-step parallelism. Here we have another synonymous and then stair-step parallelism. So it's built on that in the Hebrew.
Could that? I mean, this kind of goes back to the question that she just said, so this might be totally irrelevant, but like, could that be a call out to the earlier tradition of the 12 major prophets?
Maybe. I mean, the prophets are always speaking. I mean, this is a direct speech of God, and when it's not saying, "Come out, you three," this is a direct, sermon invective against them, and the prophets always have that form. So it may just, you're right, that may just be convention for God's punishment language is to use poetry. Now I'm thinking about how kind of funny that is, actually. So I've got something to say to you that's going to make you angry. I shall now write a poem about it. So someone pointed that out, that hip-hop battles, like you get these hip-hop rap battles against two people. It's like, I'm so angry at you, I'm going to write a poem about it. That's exactly what's happening here. So yeah, interesting idea. Hadn't put that together. So. Other questions or concerns? All right, well, let's get one more disobedience in here. The Lord said to Moses, send men. I couldn't skip this part. Now I knew Bob would be here. The Lord said to Moses, send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites. From each of the ancestral tribes you shall send a man, every one a leader among them. So Moses sent from the wilderness of Paran according to the command of the Lord, all the leading men among them, Israelites. These were their names from the tribe of, you might remember these because Randall quoted these at my installation, so these may seem familiar. From the tribe of Reuben, Shammua, son of Zakur. From the tribe of Simeon, Shaphat, son of Hori. From the tribe of Judah, Caleb, son of Jephunneh. From the tribe of Issachar, Igal, son of Joseph. The tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea, son of Nun. From the tribe of Benjamin, Palti, son of Raphu. From the tribe of Zebulun, Gaddiel, son of Sodi. From the tribe of Joseph, that is the tribe of Manasseh, Gadi, son of Susi. From the tribe of Dan, Amiel, son of Gamali. From the tribe of Asher, Sethar, son of Michael. From the tribe of Naphtali, Nabi, son of Vafsi. From the tribe of Gad, Guel, son of Maki. These were the names of the men whom Moses sent out to spy the land. And Moses changed the name of Hoshea, son of Nun, to Joshua.
He didn't like his name.
You know what? That's not working for you. So it is not just, his name is no longer just redemption, but the Lord is redemption, is what he changed his name to. So he went from just, and by the way, that's Jesus' name too, Yeshua. It's the same thing. The Lord is salvation. The Lord is deliverance. That's what that means. This is just the word deliverance, and he changed it to the Lord is deliverance. So yeah. So Moses sent them out to spy the land and said to them, go up in the Negev, go up the hill country, see what the land is like, whether the people who live in it are strong or weak, few or many, whether the land they live in is good or bad, whether the towns they live in are walled or fortified, whether the land is rich or poor, whether there are trees in it or not. I always thought that's important. Are there trees? I don't want to go if there are no trees, I guess. Be bold. Bring some of the fruit of the land. Now is the season of the first ripe grapes. So they went up, spied out the land in the wilderness of Zin to Rehov, which actually I excavated, near Lebo-Hamat. And they went to the Negev, came to Hebron, Ahiman, Seshai, Talmai. The Anakites were there. Anak is a Hebrew word for large. Actually, it's the word for huge. One of my favorite experiences ever in Israel was when I was ordering at McDonald's. I got a McShawarma. That's a true story. I got a McShawarma and fries. And I got the meal, and she said, well, what size meal do you want? And I said, well, what are my options? And she said, ragil, which I knew meant regular, gadol, which in biblical Hebrew means great, and then he said, or anak. And I was like, anak? Because I thought gadol would be the big one, but no, anak. I said, well, what does anak mean? And her English, she was kind of finding the word, and she looked at me, she went, huge. I can still hear her say it in exactly that tone. So these Anakites are huge, is what these guys are big. Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. Okay, thanks. And they came to the Wadi Eshcol, cut down from there the branch of a single cluster of grapes, carried on a pole between the two of them, brought some pomegranates and figs. That place was called Wadi Eshcol because the cluster the Israelites had cut down from there. At the end of 40 days, they returned from spying out the land. They came to Moses and Aaron, to all the congregations of the Israelites in the wilderness of Paran and Kadesh, brought back word to them to all the congregations, showed them the fruit of the land. They told them, we came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey. This is its fruit. Yet the people who live in the land are strong. The towns are fortified, very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. It's huge. The Amalekites live in the land of the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites live in the hill country. The Canaanites live by the sea and along the Jordan. So everyone agrees. Great land, big people, fortified cities. No one disputes that. There's no dispute among the spies of what the land is like. Everyone agrees what the land is like. Great land, big cities, big people. But Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are able to overcome it. Then the men who gone up with him said, we're not able to go up against this people, for they are stronger than we. So they brought to the Israelites an unfavorable report of the land they had spied out, saying, the land we've gone through as spies in the land devours its inhabitants, and all the people we saw in it were of great size. There were Nephilim. They saw There we saw the Nephilim, the Anakites come from the Nephilim, and to ourselves we seemed like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them. So this is an interesting passage because I have seen study Bibles that in the notes say, this word, by the way, only occurs one other time in the Bible. You might recall it. We talked about it last fall. Genesis chapter 6, before the flood, they should have all been dead, right? That's the assumption, is they're all dead. I have seen study Bibles say, well, apparently some of the Nephilim survived the flood. To which I want to say, why are we listening to the unfaithful spies report of the city? They're trying to scare the people. So, you know what? Saw the Nephilim there. No way we could take it with Nephilim. These semi-demigod people living there, oh my gosh, no. So they're spreading this report around. There's no way we can take it. So no, I'm not taking them at their word. I don't believe the Nephilim are in the land. I don't need to explain why they're there. So, how are we doing? Okay, I get wound up. If you have questions, wave, because I get excited. So, then all the congregation raised a loud cry. The people wept all night. Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation saying, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or we died in the wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become booty. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt? So they said to one another, let's choose a captain, go back to Egypt. Probably get there in 6 days at this point. True story. Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation. Israelites and Joshua son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephunneh, who were among those who spied out the land, tore their clothes, so they are mourning, they are lamenting. And they said to the congregation of the Israelites, the land we went through as spies is exceedingly good land. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord. Do not fear the people of the land, for they are no more than bread for us. We're going to eat them. Their protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. But the whole congregation threatened to stone them. Then the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the Israelites, and the Lord said to Moses, how long will this people despise me? Now, quick form, important rhetorical note here. Any time in the Old Testament that you see these two words together, how long? This is a lament formula. You'll notice it in Psalms. How long will I be sick? How long will my enemies be after me? How long will I be far from your word, O Lord? Anytime you see, I always tell the students, anytime you see how long, it is like hearing a song kick up in the key of E minor. Nothing good ever happens in E minor, ever. It is the saddest of all the keys musically. This is what how long is. How long, oh, this is God lamenting, right? God is upset here. This is not just, he's not speaking in, some sort of stentorian, distant voice. He's hurt by this, and he's deeply hurt by this. How long will this people despise me? How long will they refuse to believe in me, in spite of all the signs that I have done among them? I will strike them with pestilence and disinherit them, and I will make of you a nation greater and mightier than they. Once again, back to Exodus 32. That's it. I'm killing everyone and starting over with you. At which point, once again, Moses says, the Egyptians will hear of it, for in your might you brought up this people from among them, and they will tell the inhabitants of the land. They have heard that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people, for you, O Lord, are seen face to face. Your cloud stands over them. You go in front of them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. If you kill this people all at one time, then the nations who've heard about you will say, it's because the Lord was not able to bring this people into the land he swore to them, that he slaughtered them in the wilderness. So, again, Moses opens with, you're going to look bad. Now, look, God, the Egyptians know that you brought us in the wilderness. If you kill them all at once, then the Egyptians are going to say, well, God just couldn't take them in the land. That's what it was. Lord is too weak. You're going to look bad. It's an honor-shame society. Right? Moses knows which buttons to push. And then goes on a little bit further this time. That was enough in Exodus, but he goes on a little bit further. And now, therefore, let the power of Yahweh be great in the way you promised when you spoke. Always good to quote God back to God here. This is back, remember, we looked at this in Exodus. The Lord is slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love, forgiving iniquity and transgression, by no means clearing the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the parents upon the children, the third and fourth generation. Forgive the iniquity of this people according to the greatness of your steadfast love, your chesed, just as you have pardoned this people from Egypt even until now. So this time he went a step further. He did ask God to forgive them this time. He didn't ask that, and it was enough in Exodus 32 to say, your rep's going to take a hit. This time it's, your rep's going to take a hit, and on top of that, this isn't you. You are abounding in steadfast love.